So last time we were on the pod, we were talking about Kevin Smith's new movie that he announced, and we went through his filmography. And there was one movie in the filmography I've never seen. And as a longtime fan, it stuck out like a sore thumb. It was a glaring omission. I'd heard about the production of this film for many, many years. In fact, there's a Wikipedia element to this. It's very important. Yeah, the movie's called Killroy Was Here, and it came out in 2022. And here we are in 2024, and I think nobody has ever seen it. I think like we're some of the only people. There's certainly I couldn't find any reviews on YouTube of it. And it would seem the reason is because he buried it. And he buried it with a really weird release strategy, which somebody must have come to him and said, can we release this as an NFT? And maybe there was an appetite in 2022 to change digital releases to purchasing like NFT tokens. And he went along with it. And I watched an interview with Kevin. He spent a lot of the interview defending this decision because it's such a curious decision and nobody thought it was smart. And his reasoning was back in 2010, when I made Red State, we almost launched a crowd fund for it before Kickstarter. It was like, maybe a year before Kickstarter got popularized, and we were going to launch a website and crowdfund. And I chickened out because somebody accused me of e-begging. And I always regret that I chickened out because I could have been the first to do something that became very popular that ultimately he's really hung up on the idea that Zach Braff then crowdfunded his movie, which is also forgotten history.
Right.
So he's like, for that reason, NFT, I have to be like the first to do this weird thing.
Some folks are like, why are you doing this all? I'm like, well, number one, because we get to be first. That's very rare you get to say that anymore.
Got jealous of Trump. He was selling all of his NFTs.
I mean, this was like a year and a half before Trump got in on it.
I think so. I think Trump was late to the game, and I think only weird boomers bought those things.
We were talking to our friend Dylan on Discord about this, who had a lot of really funny commentary. This is before we even talk about the movie itself. We're just going to talk about the release. He was watching us react to the movie, and so he clipped this one piece of the Wikipedia, and he said, you got to respect that the guy managed to come up with a release model so obtuse that Wikipedia can't even manage a single sentence about how the movie was received or if it was successful or not, which is true. Nobody's seen the movie. So this is the way they describe the release. In February 2020, before the COVID-19 lockdowns, the film was set for a 2020 theatrical release. In July 2020, during San Diego Comic-Con Home, Smith indicated that the theatrical release had been pushed back to 2021. In April 21, it was announced that the film would be released exclusively as a non-fungible token. The film's distribution rights were set to be auctioned off in May 22 at Jay and Silent Bob's Crypto Studio. I don't know what that is.
Wow.
Dylan was joking that maybe it's like KevCoin or something. Killroy Was Here was ultimately released via NFT minting platform Legend.io as 5,555 exclusive tokens on July 12th, 2022. And it has not seen any other kind of release besides the auctioning off of 5,500 tokens 2 years ago.
So, what does that mean? Does that mean that there's only 5,500 copies or whatever? Or what does that mean?
Yeah, it means that like only 5,555 were sold or available.
I see.
I guess you could think of it as digital units, like Blu-rays or DVDs that were, only those many were printed.
Right.
And it's otherwise not been made available through streaming or anything else. So yeah, really nobody's seen it. And 2 years ago in this interview I was watching with Joe Blow, he was like, now don't worry, man. That doesn't mean only 5,500 people are going to see the movie, man. It's going to be on all over everything. Just for right now, we're trying something new. It's like, no, you just buried it.
There will be one day a signable version of Killroy that somebody can hold. I still live in a physical media world.
The movie was, and I remember him being on a podcast with his friend Andy McElfresh on a show called Smeducation he used to do long time ago, like 2014. They were talking about Killroy Was Here, which was like a meme, like a little, kind of like the Obey Andre the Giant thing. It's sort of like that in World War II. And he was like, and it was like, what if he was a killer monster, that thing? And what if we made a horror anthology a la Creepshow? So it should be, he kept saying, it's my Creepshow. I want to make Creepshow. Anytime Kevin makes a bad movie, like Cop Out or anything like that, it's always justified with like, I used to watch movies like this when I was a kid, man. Creepshow, man. This is my chance to make Creepshow. Now, this Wikipedia article doesn't go into it, but my understanding is I think the Ringling College of Art and Design either funded a portion of it, like, because when Kevin wants to make a movie, he has to like piece the budget together from different sources. Normally people Normally he can find people who want to make movies with him, but it's not through any traditional means normally. Like Lionsgate's the closest thing he's had in a while. Again, for those who don't know, I guess Jay and Silent Bob's reboot sold a lot of Blu-rays. And so that kind of like kickstarted a good relationship he had with Lionsgate, and they made Clerks 3. They did not make this. And but what I know is that the Ringling College like film school was his crew.
I see. So it was kind of like a teaching thing.
Yeah, it was like bring a famous director to our school and give him, some resources, and our students will get a learning experience.
Well, it totally feels like that. I can tell you that much.
Yeah. So
it looks like something like a school project. Yeah, that I would have been a part of, helping somebody out at Emerson or something.
Yes. Yeah. It actually felt like we do a series called No Views, or we did do a series called No Views, where we find like unviewed narrative films on the internet and we review them. And it has that energy, I would say. Like it's quite fucking bad.
Yeah. It's very much in that same vein, and not the good ones that we see.
I think I don't know, if we had encountered like one of the anthology stories and watched it on No Views, do you think we would be like, well, it was reasonably well shot? Like, wouldn't we say things like that? Probably.
Well, we always put a time, like, I think John always puts a time search limit on there. So these go past that time search in like the 3 minutes or whatever we say.
So it would have not stayed its welcome, overstayed its welcome.
So they all overstay their welcome. So, so maybe if they were tightened up to those 3 minutes, maybe.
Oh, well, here's the, speaking of runtime, here's one of the bombshells. This thing is an hour long.
Yes.
It is very short, and it's an anthology that's an hour long.
It's four stories, and then like a framing device, which that's Kevin Smith's daughter right there, right?
Yeah, and she's acting her ass off. She's like, "Did you know the story of Killroy?" I don't know. She's like trying to come off overly natural. It's a lot.
Yeah, very strange voice. It's like she's swallowing all of her words. Did you know that Killroy? If you say it 3 times, her voice. It's kind of like warbly and like she's swallowing her words.
Well, smart guy. Sometimes Killroy isn't very careful.
She's not the worst. I've seen her in Clerks 3, or no, not in Clerks 3, in Jay and Silent Bob reboot, and I thought she was reasonably good in that. She's reasonably good in Yoga Hosers, even though the movie is just a terrible piece of shit. I think she should probably branch outside of Kevin Smith movies. I think he's not doing her any favors.
Yeah, so she's like a babysitter, and she's looking after a young kid who's fine. It's whatever, and she's telling the story about Killroy, weirdly going back to like the history of Killroy and how you say its name a few times, and there's all these stories about Killroy killing people. So yeah, she does that as the framing device, and then you see stories featuring Killroy.
And he got Robert Kurtzman to do the rubber suit for Killroy. He's the guy who did he was on the special effects crew for Evil Dead 2. Yeah, he's a legend in the industry, this guy.
Yeah. If the mask was good, I don't think it was lit properly, because it looks more like a rubber mask than other things I've seen from him.
Yeah, I would say the shooting overall, that was really what felt college to me. It felt very like unmotivated camera. Like they had the color correction. Remember like the scene with the sick girl, the Munchausen by proxy girl? It's like all yellow for some reason, and
oh yeah,
there's like no depth to the lensing. It looked very like, I don't know, the color in the whole movie felt really off.
I know, and like that poor girl, she can't really close her mouth, so she's got like that like toothy upside down face, and then and it's yellow, and it's yellow with the color correction. And you're just like, oh, this is awful.
The framing device is his daughter, and then there's one that's like there's a mom, like a smothering mother character who's intentionally keeping her daughter sick so she can take care of her, and she summons Killroy to kill a bunch of people, including the mom.
And it's like a religious thing too, because she's like kind of religious, right? Or goes to the church, and
as a matter of fact, just about all of the stories ultimately come back to like, aren't Christians bad, in the most juvenile way possible. And it was shot in Sarasota, Florida, by the way. So a lot of like shots at like conservative Florida and stuff throughout the whole. Yeah. But again, in this really one-dimensional, like.
Yeah. Like think of like an edgy teenager, and that's kind of the depth you'll get.
Like one of the stories stars Ralph Garman, radio host and podcast host with Kevin. I think he's actually quite a good actor. But they made him like a priest who's abusing kids, and so they kill him with Killroy. Jason Mewes plays a janitor, and another story where kids kill the adults. So there's several where children are killing the adults. And then I guess the most famous person besides Jay is Chris Jericho, wrestling's Chris Jericho.
The Gator Chaser.
The Gator Chaser. So the idea is that he's a live streamer who baits gay hookups and then streams and humiliates them. And then this woman comes along and baits him and then has Killroy kill him.
Yeah, well, with a terrible CG alligator for some reason. And so this is pre-psychotic break. This is pre-quitting weed. Nina was watching it with me and she was like, is this the thing that hospitalized him? This is rough. Dylan, again, who's killing it with the jokes. He was like, when people talk about something being critic proof, they usually don't mean this, meaning like, don't show it to anyone. It's very bizarre. Very, it feels like a combined film school project. I
think it's like he wanted to do, because if you go all the way back to 2014, he was podcasting about, remember, obviously he enjoyed podcasting about the what do you call it? The walrus stuff. And so he made Tusk. And I think he got high off of like, literally and figuratively off of, let's have these silly conversations turn into movies. And one of them was about Krampus, and he wanted to make a Krampus movie. And obviously everybody beat him to the punch. And so then he was like, well, what's something else we could do as a horror anthology creep show sort of thing? And he stumbled on this. By the time the thing gets made with the fucking college and the NFTs and the hour-long runtime and the abysmal, unwatchable movie, truly, I mean, it is some bad shit.
Yeah, the Gator Chaser one literally must have been shot on a phone or something. It was like,
yeah, it's like very like scoped down. It's like they probably had Chris for maybe a few hours, and just
and he like improvises for like most of it. Yeah, and they have like a scrolling chat next to him with like MAGA 2020 and stuff like that. And you're like,
so
what is this?
I can't, like, once the dust of all that mess clears, what I see is like I had an idea for a movie and I didn't want to just not do it. And so by any means necessary, through any amount of imperfection, through any amount of sloppiness, I have produced a film. I think he had shot Clerks 3 like right before he released this one, if we can call it that. So like during the press of it, which again, there was almost no press. There's like this one interview on YouTube. He's mostly just like, hey, like I'm about to make Clerks 3, or I'm about to release Clerks 3. Because it was like 2 years ago, and he was doing He-Man right around the same time. So this thing gets like just lost in the shuffle, and for that reason, I find it fascinating. I love it. Is it admirable in a sense that nothing stopped him from getting this movie made?
I don't know. I don't know how to feel. If you didn't tell me it was Kevin Smith, I would never know.
It reminds me a bit. I've been on a real Doug Walker kick the last couple of days, watching reviews of his anniversary movies and all that stuff. And those movies are fascinating for all kinds of reasons. But as a filmmaker, one of the and someday we will watch all of those and we will review them. But one of the reasons is because it's really clear that it's just like they have a handy cam in their hands. They point it at a guy in a Halloween costume. He says a line and they move on. and like that's what you're watching. You're watching just like a absolute filmmaking chaos. Like nobody cares if it's good or not.
Center in the frame every time.
The green screen that like you can see all the green around the dude, and the acting sucks, and you can smell everybody through the camera. The frame rate is like, as it's that 30p shit that. It looks like the color sensor is like single chip, from like the early 2000s.
Single chip. They put it on like, I don't know, aperture priority, so the shutters going all crazy.
They're shooting like directly into bay windows. So we were talking about this quite a bit on Discord, and Jason comes to Channel Awesome's defense really hard. He meat rides them even harder than Gerard himself. Mostly it's because he's like, well, look, I'm not a filmmaker and I like that they made this and I want to make stuff. And so it's kind of like a soft, like a subtle defense of himself in a way. And again, I thought I think I was misunderstood, that I was saying like, I was making the argument, these guys should level up a bit. Like they should not shoot directly into the bay window. They should, like maybe like think about what it like. The fact that it's so chaotically made, these are like 3.5 hour long YouTube videos, with each person having less charisma than the last. there was just no element of like just taking a pause, taking a breath, and being like, why are we making this again? What are we making because I love prolific people. I love people who stay busy. I love people who are excited to be making what they're making. I even kind of like making things for the sake of it, because I think productivity is just kind of good natively. But there is such a thing as going a little too far with it, where it's just like, just take a breath and just, have an opinion about what it ought to be, and then try to kind of like strive towards that instead of just letting it be anything at all and releasing it as an NFT. But that's Kevin, man. Kevin is he would tell you that like, well, it's the same spirit that made Clerks that made Killroy was here, man. And I'm like, I don't think that's true.
So.
I think that the guy who made Clerks was really excited about Clerks. He was really, really, he wasn't making He-Man at the same time. He wasn't making he wasn't just trying to like put coals in the fire and a lot, anytime he's directed like episodes of Supergirl or of The Flash, like those CW shows, he always described his role on, because those are big TV productions where the director doesn't really matter. Like the director doesn't have a voice the way a director has a voice in a movie. So that when they ask him to direct those shows, I think he's mostly just kind of like an MC. He's almost like a mascot for the day. And so he's always like, they all know what they're doing, man. Let them do what they're doing. I just show up with donuts. I'm the donut king, man. And I think this movie, what I see is a director who was the donut king. Yeah. And nobody really cared what was going on. Like, I bet you there's some college student that worked on this that has a hell of a story.
Oh, yeah. I'm sure he lorded over them all and talked their ears off, and, they had some fun.
My guess is he was absent for probably some of it.
Oh, I'm sure.
Some of this feels like there's nobody that's directing.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's probably true.
I wouldn't put my name on this. This is bad shit. This is really terrible stuff. I think people think, somebody asked recently, they were like, what would you say his batting average is? Like half good, half bad? And I had to think about that. And I went through his filmography and I was like, there's a lot of good here. But you can kind of see it in 3 distinct eras. There's like Clerks to Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back. That's like a distinct era. And I'd say like most of those movies are like A's and B pluses. Like that's his most solid work, right? And then like Jersey Girl is not that bad. It's I think, God, compared to Killroy Was Here and Yoga.
It's a movie at least.
Jersey Girl is a movie. Like it's a pretty good family film. I could like watch that with my daughter or my wife someday and like we'd be reasonably happy. Like Ben Affleck is a movie star and like we can watch him.
Yeah.
Like Clerks 2, that's got its charm, obviously. And then like Zack and Miri, Cop Out I Hate, and then Red State. So I think there's like a stretch there that's kind of like a little hit or miss, but kind of more hit than miss. And now we're in a new phase that's like more miss than hit, like by a long shot. And so hopefully, I don't know, hopefully he'll I think maybe he just lost his voice, honestly. He actually says that in the interview. He's like, Quentin always talks about how filmmaking's a young man's game and maybe I'm just too old. And I'm like, yeah, maybe. You don't need to just like shovel shit out the door anymore.
Maybe the downside is your shit gets uncreative, I guess, but I'm old. My shit's uncreative now.
Subscribe to Red Cow Entertainment on Patreon for full episodes every other week.